Actually, there are some where I've added some negativities, but very minor. But I've literally made notes on everything that I saw, and it took me a couple hours to do that. Oh, I didn't do the Ubisoft forward though. Well, actually,
there was nothing to talk about with this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like. Oh, it has been quite a while, hasn't it, sir?
It has. It has. A lot has taken place.
Yes, it has. And we are, I mean, you know what's weird is that the conferences just happened at the beginning of this month. And it feels like it was 10 years ago. Like, you know, the last podcast was on the 25th of May. So it's been about a month. Which is okay, man. But there's a lot. There's a lot. And I don't know if you still want to talk about the conferences or if there's other things you want to talk about. Because with the conferences, you know, I wanted to set aside quite a bit of time just because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of games that were announced, and, you know, I've put notes next to every single one in terms of what I liked about it, essentially. And actually, there are some where I've added some negativities, but very minor. But I've literally made notes on everything that I saw, and it took me a couple hours to do that. Oh, I didn't do the Ubisoft forward though. Well, actually,
there was nothing to talk about with this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, there's
nothing to talk about.
Assassin's Creed and shit. What was it? Oh, Star Wars, and that's it. That's basically they did.
I mean, they showed a brief seasonal event for X Defiant, and then it was racing games or something of the effect of it was pointless. I mean, even Microsoft had a better showcasing for the Assassin's Creed game. So, like,
yeah,
I don't know what Ubisoft was doing or what they were thinking to show it at the Xbox one when they should have done the Assassin's Creed thing for their event.
Yeah,
I mean, it would have.
Were you as surprised as I was that Just Dance didn't start the show?
No, but it still showed its face.
Did it really? I must have blanked out because I don't remember Just Dance even being there.
Dude, it's like one of their staples, and it's the stupidest thing ever. I don't understand how that thing is still alive.
I don't know either. I don't. You know, the size of that community is so fucking small. It's like, why do they bother?
Right.
Nobody plays this game.
They give up on like all their other good titles or potential good titles, and they sacrifice it for that garbage, and then they create this Star Wars. And I'll be honest, like, even though we're not explicitly talking about Ubisoft in the near future, because there's nothing to really talk about with regards to them. The Star Wars title, even though there's some controversy around it, it doesn't look terrible. But
no, I said the same thing.
But it's still not intriguing enough to me. Like, one thing I've always said about Ubisoft is that they can make beautiful looking games.
Yeah,
they do a very good job at that. If Avatar Frontiers speaks to that, I mean, they can make a good looking game.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's Massive Entertainment, the guys behind Division, which I totally think they are capable of making a good game. It's just $70 at a base price, and they want 130 for the collector's edition or some stupid shit. Like, no, it's not worth that. I can guarantee you it's not worth that, because so many people are so against this game purely out of the fact that, like, they're trying to make a female Han Solo. It's like, that's blasphemy right there.
Yeah, they're making a lot of very alt progressive moves. It's like, why are you pressing these social issues? It's like, because you had this one scandal that took place where you were considered a poor business because of your, sexual biases. Look at Blizzard. You know, like, Blizzard has just started sucking at updating their games, but they haven't really done anything drastic. Yeah,
and I actually I skipped over the trailer. I've actually skipped over a couple of games because there were just like some games in there that I just didn't care for, but like, I didn't put the Diablo expansion on my list because I'm like, I don't give a shit. Diablo 4 is a joke, and I don't understand why people are still playing that game. Just go back and play Diablo 3. They're still doing updates for that. I mean, I don't know if they're doing seasons anymore, but like there's a shit ton of stuff you can do in that.
I think one of the biggest reasons why people are still talking about Diablo 4 is because of all the Diablos. And I've never played one of them. Okay. I played Diablo Immortal a little bit because it was free to play.
Yeah.
And it's all right, but ARPGs aren't really my thing, I guess. I just haven't really gotten accustomed to them. But regardless, I still follow up on the news, and it seems as though that there is a huge player base for the casual aspect of Diablo 4. So it's not the diehard Diablo fans that are really sticking to it. It's a lot of the casuals.
No, the diehard fans are actually still back on Diablo 2.
You're right, exactly.
You know?
Yeah,
they didn't even touch Diablo 3. They're like, fuck that game.
A decade ago.
Yeah. Oh, it's more than a decade. It's like, I think it's 20 years old 15? At this point. Yeah.
Is it 20?
It came out in 2000.
Man, really that long ago?
Diablo. Come on. Yeah. Diablo 22. Yeah, 2.
2002?
2000.
2000.
Yeah,
Jeez,
yeah. So June 28th, almost to the day, dude. It was 24 years ago.
Dude, I kid you not. Like, for a game to be immortalized and still talked about 20 years, it's 2 decades after its initial
Not just
launch.
Talked about, played.
Played even, yeah. I mean, like
that's the real Diablo Immortal.
The only other system, console, or game type that has ever stood the test of time that is still played 40 years later is like the Super Mario series.
Oh yeah.
Right? The Mario Bros series. Like that's still played indefinitely. And I think Nintendo has that that ability to create games that stand the test of time.
You know what other game is still going that's 20 years old? Final Fantasy 11. Came out in 2002. It's 12 years. It's 22 years old.
And people are still playing it?
The game's still going. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even how bad it was?
It wasn't bad.
For how bad it was? I remember you mentioning how the grind was awful.
Oh, it depended on what. Yeah. At the very beginning, it was hard. I wouldn't say it was bad. It was one of those. It was at the time. It came up before World of Warcraft, by the way, I must add. But it was at a time where, you know, the people from Ultima and I don't know, what was the other one? I forgot the name. I don't know why I'm Lineage, like stuff like that. Like people who were really hardcore MMO players, that was the game for them. And then WoW came out, introduced a whole new world to a whole new range of people. And it was still hard. You know, World of Warcraft was hard in its own right. But I still said, even back then when I started playing it, because obviously at the time, no way mom and dad would have actually paid for that. But
no way.
But when I finally got around to playing it, I still thought that Final Fantasy was the MMO for adults, which is a weird thing to say. And World of Warcraft was for the people who wanted a little bit easier of a time. But then 11 made it a little bit more accessible with the level sync system where you could go literally in any, because you used to like have to stay in one spot. The dunes is like, will never leave my mind. The dunes was the first major area that you got to, and that is where you stayed for a very long time. But then after you got out of there, you'd go to the next area. And it's so you just stay in one area for, I don't know, weeks, months, grinding out levels. And then you would move on to the next area and get through those levels and stuff like that. But then they introduced the level sync system, and then you really didn't have to go anywhere else. You could just stay in one area, like the dunes, which most people really enjoyed that place. And we just grinded out levels, and it wouldn't matter what level you were because you would always be gaining XP for your main level while your character was level synced down to the lowest character or lowest person in the group. And then you just gain levels.
The level sync system that is in 14, is that the same is that a derivative of 11?
Yes, it is. And I'm so happy 14 is the perfect MMO. I don't give a shit what anybody says. It is literally the epitome of MMO design. They had everything a lot of the things they had in 11, they took over, like the level sync system and stuff. And then they saw what Destiny was doing. I don't know about World of Warcraft, but like, you know, those fates those little areas that you go to face world bosses and stuff. That was like an idea they took from, you know, something like Destiny. They took little ideas from the Old Republic, Star Wars, the Old Republic, and they just took all the good shit and just brought it into this. But they did something better than World of Warcraft, which was a raid group finder. World of Warcraft didn't do that until later. Final Fantasy XIV had it first, and they just basically said, you want a raid, but you don't have a clan? Here's a raid finder for you. Have fun. And it's like, thank you. You know?
So when people talk about how great WoW was.
Oh, it was great.
Do you feel as though Final Fantasy was steps ahead? It's just that their recognition was more in the RPG rather than the MMO genre?
I think in a lot of ways, 14 did have a lot of steps ahead because they failed miserably on 1.0. And so that's why it is what it is now, because Yoshi P came in and said, all right, we're rehauling the whole thing. And he built it from the ground up within, I think it was like within 16 months or something like that. Like they turned it around in maybe just over a year or less than a year. It was a ridiculous turnaround. And he just said, let's take a whole bunch of shit from all these other great games, great MMOs, and just put it in one game. And I'm like, it just turned into one of the greatest MMOs, the greatest MMO, in my opinion. You know, I've played a lot of MMOs, and none of them have stuck with me like 14 has. I mean, this game, I told Jeremy to take a look at my last 14 stream of the finale of Endwalker, the patch 6.5, I think. And that trial that we did against, I think it was the void, not the void scent, but it was just a giant wall of a void scent. It was a humongous beast. And I've never played a trial like that before. It was epic. It was shit going off all the time, and you are just head on a swivel. You're like, okay, I gotta go over here. I gotta go over here. It is nuts. And I'm like, how is every single dungeon and every single trial different from the last one? How do they keep doing it? I swear to God, dude, you play through every single dungeon. They're not the same. None of them. There's no repeats. And I'm like, well, these guys are brilliant.
Think about their history, right? Like they've been making Final Fantasy since NES.
Yep.
And every Final Fantasy since then has been different.
Yes.
There hasn't.
I mean, they
have
any repeats. They have elements that are similar, like the turn-based combat and stuff like that, active time battle. And so like obviously some of the gameplay is similar, but then once we got to 12, it became more of like MMO like, because 12 took what 11 did and just made it into a single player game. And then 13 changed it up again, even though it was like you'd still run into mobs and stuff. You could actively see them. And I think you could do that since 10. I can't remember. But like you could see them.
You could. And 10 you could.
So you could see them and you'd go into regular battle and stuff like that. Then 14, of course, came along.
No, correction. 10 you couldn't. I'm thinking of 12.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it started with 12. So they started the whole like, oh, you can see the monster. You can go get it. But the style of game changed up with 13, where it's like you had the paradigm system where you could swap jobs on the fly. And that was the gameplay. That was the combat. Then 14 was your standard MMO. And then 15 changed it up again with more of an action orientation, but you still had the menu system. 16 fucking again, like it's more of like an ARP or an action RPG, like a fucking Devil May Cry, because they had the Devil May Cry combat designer work on it. You know, I can only imagine what 17 is going to be like. And I mean, 14 is I've never played such an amazing story. Like I told Sean today at work, my boss, because, you know, I finally told him what I was, you know, doing on Friday. Because, you know, he loves to bust my balls about it. And so I said, yeah, I mean, if you look at just the base game, A Realm Reborn, that game alone has a campaign that's at least 100 hours long by itself.
Yeah.
which is insane. And then every expansion adds at least 60 to 80 hours more. It's fucking insane, these people. And they
well, that's the glory of and wonderful nature of the genre, right? You know, you have an MMO that is online that, you know, is essentially endless. It's not, it doesn't have a finite, aspect to it.
Right.
It's just, you know, you can get DLCs, right? Which is all well and good, I guess, but there's always going to be an end to single stories. Like, even if you look at Elden Ring with its new release of its DLC,
right,
there's an end to that.
Right.
The only surviving aspect of it is the PvP, which not a lot of people participate in, and unless you're really skilled or understand the leveling system, there is actually an optimal level to be at, and that's not the highest level. It's actually around 100 or 120.
Yeah.
And unless you build around that, it's like the PvP doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Right.
So unless you know those things, it's like there's a finished product in most games, and that's a glory about MMOs, is that there is no end.
Yeah. Especially
because even if you look at GT Online, people role play. You could do the same thing. You could do the same thing in Final Fantasy. You could do the same thing in World of Warcraft.
Yep.
That's the glory of an MMO, and I think that's why Final Fantasy 14. I don't think they're going to make another MMO RPG. I think they're just going to keep it at 14. I mean, they're supposed to be doing visual enhancements, right? Unless that already happened.
No, that's happening on the release of patch 7.0.
So they're gonna do that, and I'm sure like there could be more stories that they add. Who knows?
Well, I mean, the whole expansion is obviously a whole new story, but just it keeps blowing my mind because Final Fantasy, while, you know, World of Warcraft has its story, but its story has changed over the years, where if you go back and you go into the retail version of World of Warcraft, and by retail, I mean like the current version that's up to date, all that shit, and not like World of Warcraft Classic or whatever. You go into the retail version, the beginning when you start a new character is extremely different from the original classic World of Warcraft. Like it's not the same story. It doesn't start the same way. It starts similarly, but just not the same way. And so the story has changed drastically. Whereas you go into Final Fantasy 14, you start a whole new character. It's the same as it was 10 years ago. It's the same start, the same beginnings, depending on where you know, which city you choose. So anybody coming into the game now can experience it as we did 10 years ago.
Can't say that about Destiny 2.
Can't say that about Destiny. I mean, Destiny 1, yeah. But yeah, Destiny 2, all that shit's gone. And, you know, that's why I love 14 so much. Just because, I mean, the biggest deal is not only does every expansion have its own full set of main scenario quests that add, you know, I might have over exaggerated. It feels like 60, 80 hours, but like it's like a full length game, you know, 30, 40, 50 hours maybe. And that's including the patches, the post patches. But it also adds tons of more. Like, I don't know if you saw the list of dungeons, but there's like at least 8 dungeons new coming in, multiple new trials, multiple new raids. So that's on top of, and I think what it is that 14 expansions come out once every 2 years. They don't come out every single year. And I'm not saying that World of Warcraft expansions come out every year, but it seems like they're a lot more frequent than 14s, you know, because it's hard to believe, but Endwalker was 2 years ago. I don't know. It's crazy.
It goes to show like how important that time is, though, because the quality of the DLCs that Warcraft or World of Warcraft have put out, from what I understand, haven't been that great.
Oh, there have been misses. Yeah.
Dragonflight seems to have built some sort of resurgence in terms of player engagement.
Right.
But it still is so short in the quality of what they once put out. That's what I hear. I don't like, just let it be known. Like, I don't play these games, but the truth is like, I pay attention to the news, and I just hear complaint after complaint after complaint. And this is with every game that Blizzard or Activision or whoever puts out over in that company. Because you look at Overwatch 2, I mean, that's just it's the same game as Overwatch, but it's just like it's lost its charm. It's lost its spark. There's missteps, and then you have
its identity.
And then you've got World of Warcraft, which doesn't seem to be doing great, patch after patch after patch. And I mean, they're just blunders left and right. So they're like, they've hit this big canyon, right? And they're bleeding at the fingertips, clawing their way back up the mountain ledge, because what they have done to their player base has just kind of disrespected their time. And they're trying to meet the needs of the casual player. And to an extent, I kind of understand that, because they're trying to expand their player base. But when you expand it too much into the casual realm, you lose the charm that brought people to beloved the game. The same thing happened with Assassin's Creed. You took away a lot of the elements that drew people into this, what they said was a niche genre, which honestly it ended up not being a niche thing.
Not anymore.
But you took away all those elements, and then you made it super casual, and you took away all the sci-fi aspects. And you took away all it now just becomes like this historical action adventure game. There is no assassin lore to it anymore, or at least it doesn't feel that way. Well, there's no relevance to the modern day story, which was the primary like glue to the whole purpose of this. So
and that's how I feel. Yeah. You know, that's how I feel about. That's exactly my thought when I saw the gameplay. You know, they focused. I mean, okay, they focused on both characters, but when they were focusing on Yasuke, which by the way, there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Yellow Flash. Every time he covers, okay, you know him. He says Yusuke, and I'm like, it's Yasuke. Yasuke, say it with me. I love the guy, but he says Yusuke every time. I'm like, dude, it's Yasuke. Please stop. And I think he's doing it on purpose. But anyway, I digress.
I think it's me.
It's so annoying. But anyway, so that's exactly how I felt when I saw the gameplay of Yasuke. I'm like, where's the Assassin's Creed part? It's just their version of Tsushima. And we've all been saying that. We've been saying that ever since they revealed it. Let's be honest. All of us have been saying that. Yasuke is Ghost of Tsushima's side of Assassin's Creed. And then you get the Assassin's Creed with Naue. But even then, it's like, but she can't really fight a group of guys, you know. She's an assassin, but like there's no Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
Not to delve too deep into this, because I could honestly spend 2 hours talking about it.
Oh yeah.
But let truth be told, okay? Even though Ubisoft is going the RPG route with a lot of the Assassin's Creed titles, they don't do RPGs right.
No.
Okay. If you look at the 3 big titles, Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, they're all supposed to be RPGs. And they're like, you can build your character how you see fit, how you want to play your character. Bullshit.
That's not true.
Truth is, you can fill out the entire skill tree and play however you want, absolutely, but you don't have any specialty. Do you think they're going to change up that formula for Shadows?
No.
I think not.
No,
I think they're having the 2 characters for the sake of having 2 characters to create some sort of narrative device that will not work. It won't matter. It will serve no impact to the general story and narrative of the game. It's not going to have the impact that they think it's going to. And you can play as Naue or Yasuke, and it won't matter. It won't change the storyline whatsoever. I have no faith that Ubisoft is going to make character selection relevant, and I don't think they're going to make it so Naue can't fight groups of people. I mean, they even showed it in the gameplay trailer where she's caught, and the only reason they ran out was kind of prove a point. Oh, well, now she's killed enough people that she can escape. No, you could have sat there and eliminated all of them.
Pretty much.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You could have done it. You went unscathed. You didn't even take any damage in that fight. You could have taken them all out, but instead you're just trying to make it seem like you can't handle that fight. Come on.
Well, Ubisoft is notorious for their choreographed trailers. Let's be honest. It's been 10 years at least of them doing this shit ever since Watch Dogs 1. You know, and if you remember the First Division reveal, extremely choreographed. God. You know, nobody talks like that in comms ever. Nobody is that tactical. Nobody's like, all right, I see these guys over here. You sit there, and nobody talks like that. So stop doing that. Just show gameplay. That's all we care about. And you know, the gameplay, it's fine. You got to show off. It's got to be choreographed to a point because you got to get the point across. But at the same time, it's like, I guarantee you nobody's going to take that path of how to kill that guy. They're just going to go in and they're just going to murder the fuck out of him and then get out. Because that's the objective. Nobody's going to take their time and freaking, you know, they'll take 2 seconds. They'll look at the layout. They'll see where they can go and they'll kill the guy and get out. That's it. They're not going to be like stealthy like a real assassin or a real ninja or shinobi. That's not the way people play. It's so stupid.
I mean, do you recall the meme of Ezio standing around a bunch of dead bodies? And it's like the best way to play as an assassin is to ensure everybody's dead.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been an ongoing meme since Assassin's Creed 2. No player actually ever played like an assassin. The only reason anyone ever played like an assassin in that series is for the challenge of trying to do that, because you could realistically just go in and eliminate everybody. Right. In fact, if you watch me play, I do the same exact thing. I never really go like balls in. Like, I will go around and assassinate people as much as possible, but the games have never been challenging. No. Look at Valhalla. I've had almost 500 hours into that game. I've had it on the hardest difficulty. You know, I have had it on the hardest difficulty since the beginning, and I never once really experienced a challenge except against the one main boss, which is the King of Jotunheim. I don't remember his name. But I could not. He was just such a giant in such a small space. It was hard to get around some of his moves. And there was a challenge against one of the 3 sisters. She was the hardest of the 3. And the only reason it was a challenge was because someone had set up my loadout and said, please pick the weakest armor and weakest weapon that you have in your arsenal and try to win the fight. And I got her down to 3/4 and like multiple times. It's like, I just cannot get past this threshold. And that was the only reason why it was hard. You gave me the armor, my armor that I had and my weapon that I had, I could have beat her without much issue. Right. But they've never had difficulty in the games, and I don't foresee this being any more difficult either.
They have certainly made it seem like there's difficulty for the people who aren't smart enough to, you know, figure out that there isn't. You know, I have made, like, I went back and for that footage for, I think, our first podcast I used Assassin's Creed Origins. I was really confused by the controls because I had been playing, I think at that time, I was playing Stellar Blade. And so I was used to those controls and how to parry and dodge in those. And then I went into, after I had recorded, oh no, it was during the recording, actually. Obviously, I cut it out of the recording for the video, but like, I went into the settings and I found out you can change the whole controller layout, which of course you can, but I didn't realize that there was a controller layout that was very similar to what I was doing to the controls that I was using in Stellar Blade. And I'm like, well, shit, why didn't I just do this? And so, you know, obviously if you're dumb like me and you didn't go into the controls to see if there was any different layouts, it looked like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And so I got punished for it. But they're not hard games. I mean, it's all about gear. And just like with Diablo, it's all about gear. That's what they are. They're action games. They're looter shooters, but, you know, melee, obviously. They're looter melee games. That's all they are. You get the best loot, you win. Done.
It's like most games, even like the Dark Souls or Souls type games. Once you find the rhythm of the game, it's not a problem. Like, even if you look at Sucker Punch's Ghost of Tsushima, like when I played that game on the hardest difficulty, and then they actually added another difficulty after that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like they had 3 main difficulties, and then they added another, and then they added a 4th difficulty, which I ended up putting on at a later time when it actually released. I think it was around the PS5 release when they actually launched that. But the important thing about Ghost of Tsushima is learning the parry system and getting used to that, learning the timing. I still can't fucking kill those spearmen. Like they are just the most annoying enemy in the entire game. Right. But learning the parry system is fundamental in Ghost of Tsushima, and you will die 100 times just trying to figure that out and get the timing down. because it's always different as enemies get harder as you progress through the story. They're going to have more. They're going to try to fake you out more.
Right.
They're going to have greater health, greater armor. They're going to be faster. They're going to be more intelligent. And then when you have those duels against some of the main protagonists or antagonists, and if you just have those world-based duels against Ronin, those are very difficult as well. So you have the challenge there. But once you start learning and you're picking up the rhythm, it becomes second nature.
Right.
Which is why I ended up getting so good at the game, because it was nonstop. I'm being pushed to my limit and forced to do these things. Assassin's Creed doesn't have that. It's never once had that. It's never been difficult. They give you so many tools, and they essentially make you a superhuman. Even in Mirage, I haven't played the one life mode yet, but I can almost guarantee the only reason I would ever die is because I jumped the wrong way. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing in the game, and yeah, I just don't see. Sure, one life. That's actually what did I used to call it? It was basically, it's fake difficulty. Yeah, it's just like, oh, you got one life. Be careful. It's like, okay, if you're not an idiot, and sometimes we do stupid shit. I mean, we jump off a ledge, we think we're gonna make the jump, and it doesn't work. But that doesn't sound. I mean, what you were talking about, the parry system, I felt the same way in Stellar Blade. Like, the fight against Raven?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? After I actually started, by the way, a game is good, at least from my perspective, when I immediately start a New Game Plus. I don't play New Game Plus. The only other game I did a New Game Plus on was Days Gone, and I haven't even finished that yet. The moment I was done with that stream and I finished Stellar Blade, I started up a New Game Plus, and I'm like, I got to play this game some more. It is so fucking good. And some people are like, oh, you just want to look at her ass. Yes, I do. But you know what? It's also an amazing game. The combat is so fluid. But anyway, so I went back into the exospines that you can have 2 of. I looked back through them again. I'm an idiot. I saw that there was one called a reflex exospine type. Guess what it does? It opens the window for your parry and your dodge to be bigger. I'm like, motherfucker, are you kidding me? I completely forgot to look at these things. So I'm like,
well, listen, there's a benefit to missing that, though.
Oh, dude.
Your skills are sharper. You're able to parry even at like that. That's kind of like, I don't want to say it's artificial difficulty, but it's a difficulty nonetheless. When you become so good at a game, you try to find ways to make it a little bit more difficult for yourself to kind of like reinvigorate those feelings that you want to reignite those feelings that you had when you first played the game.
Yeah.
And so you try to find weird ways to kind of like hinder yourself or handicap yourself so that you're like, okay, can I beat it? Like you see this with Elden Ring or even Dark Souls.
Yep.
People run in with level 1 and then they try to melee the final boss, right?
Right.
Like you try to find these artificial ways to make it more difficult so that you can hone your skills. I mean, without that, that suit that you're referring to,
the exospine.
I mean, yeah, you've either by accident or just by sheer fate, were forced to hone your skills on the parry system. And I'm experiencing the same thing in Rise of the Ronin. Like there's this fight. Well, it's not really a fight, but you can go into these dojos in the different areas and train. Right, you're not going to lose any of your stuff.
Right.
If you lose, it's literally just training. And there's a protagonist. Well, he's kind of like an anti-hero. Kind of sort of in the game. His name's Genzui, and he runs with double katana. Now I beat him already early on in the story, and we partied up or whatever, and he's part of the anti-shogunate group. But then at a later time, you can face him in the dojo, and I'm telling you, dude. First of all, the parry system in Rise of the Ronin is my least favorite I've ever had in any kind of game that has a parry system.
Right.
But I have gotten used to it. But against Genzui, it's impossible. I don't want to say it's impossible, but for me, it seems impossible. Yes, I'm playing on the hardest difficulty, but the parry window, I swear to God, dude, I parry so much in that game, I'm almost like 80 to 85% like consistent with it.
Right.
But against him, it drops to like 30%.
Yeah.
Like I can't parry him to save my life, and I went up against him at least 10 times. And it feels like it never got any better. You know, the whole point of the dojo system is to improve your stances so that they become more powerful, and you actually get something called I'm kind of blanking on it. It's like an ultra powerful like technique for that stance, and you have to go in the dojo and train and do all that, and it gives value to going to the dojo to train.
Right.
But on his, I don't think I'll ever be able to accomplish that. I don't. I would have to spend hours just honing my skills on his, and he is so fast that once I'm done honing my skills on him, then I gotta go up against people who are a third his speed, and then I gotta adjust to that. And I'm sure you're familiar with that, where you're going up against someone who is just like they're super fast and blah blah blah, and you're like, man, I gotta try to keep up. And so your fingers are getting acclimated to pressing buttons so fast at such a tempo. You're like, okay, I'm getting it down, and then you go up against a motherfucker who feels like it's like the first time throwing a sword.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's how I feel about like a lot of the standard enemies in Stellar Blade, where they have that they're going to go into a swing, but then they have that pause, and so you block too early. I hate that. It's so frustrating. I know they're going to do it, and I still hit it too early. It's so dumb.
It's because of the habit you've formed. It's that innate muscle reflex that you have formed from doing the same thing over and over just to get acclimated to their move sets, and then they throw in that curveball. They do it on purpose.
Yeah, it's frustrating. But like that's going back to your point about Assassin's Creed. By the way, I've been recording this whole time, so this might be the whole Ubisoft section. Going back to Assassin's Creed, where you said it's just not hard at all. This New Game Plus, I started off on normal, and I was like, wait a second, I just unlocked hard. So I boosted it up to hard while in the game. It basically feels like I'm playing the game again at level 1, but it's not any harder. So I go into New Game Plus with all my upgrades and all my outfits and stuff like that, which, you know, the outfits have no effect on the gameplay, but I have all my upgrades. And on top of that, if you get the upgrades that you normally would get in the first playthrough, they're just another level up. So an Exospine can have, not an Exospine, but like one of the other modules that you can have has a Mark II version, and it just keeps going up. And I'm like, and now my weapon level, which was maxed out, is now going up more. And my tumbler I maxed out, but then that unlocked tumbler number 2. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. So it just keeps going. And so, yes, you can still die if you're careless, which I have, because it's on hard. They do more damage. They take more damage, but it still feels like this is pretty similar to when I was weak and didn't have all these upgrades. So, you know, it doesn't feel like it got harder. It's just you have to not be stupid. And I can't stop playing this fucking game. It's so good. And I will get all the trophies, hands down. And I went through almost all the bosses on normal difficulty on the boss challenge. There's actually the boss challenge menu item. You just go through and rattle off all the bosses in a row on story, normal, and hard difficulty. I almost finished all the ones in normal difficulty, but I was like, you know what? Raven's next, and I don't want to deal with her right now. So I went back and just did a New Game Plus. But, you know, just like with Assassin's Creed, the recent ones anyway, you know, and I guess you could say pretty much with any of them, there's no difficulty. I think the original was probably the hardest Assassin's Creed in the entire series, because you were very limited by the technology that they had back then. So it was like you could only do so much. And if you got surrounded, you better be good with you know, blocking, dodging, whatever, because you're going to get your ass beat. But then AC2 comes out, it perfects that whole system. The climbing system was phenomenal, and it just became a fun game to play. But now it's just ridiculous. It's a looter's melee game. Depending on the loot that you got, you'll either be really fine or get shit on. It doesn't really make a difference. You know, so you're just going to live through it. I can say
this much. With Assassin's Creed 1, they made it so when you actually got hit, it hurt.
Yeah,
like you lost health quite a bit. It wasn't just a little bit. It was quite a bit. And you didn't have any extra armor. Like you just had your assassin's garb. That was it. The only thing you got were new items, like daggers, your upgraded sword, your upgraded hidden blade. Like that was it. You just had upgraded weapons. There was no better armor, and yes, you could get more health, which means you could stay in the fight longer. But even the fight against Robert at the end, like, dude, like you get surrounded, you get hit, you're hurt. You got to be careful, and you have no healing jars, you got no potions, you got nothing. So you best be on your game. And they kind of carried that over into Assassin's Creed 2, but as time went on, it just felt like you could survive just about anything. And then they gave you so many items, like later on, you got smoke bombs, like in Revelations, you ended up getting smoke bombs or cherry bombs and all these other things. And
right.
All of a sudden, it's like evasion was so much easier. The enemies couldn't shoot or shit. It was like they were stormtroopers, just missing all the time.
Oh, by the way, I remember,
then they would shoot you in the butt.
I remember the term I used. I used to call it artificial difficulty. It's fake difficulty essentially, but I use the term artificial. It's literally just them trying to make it seem like the game's difficult, but it's not actually difficult.
Yeah, it's not.
You just have to read the room.
But yeah, as the series went on, it just became less about stealth, and it like if you weren't stealthy, you weren't punished.
Right.
I think Unity did an incredible job with the stealth system. I think the addition of having the last known location show up was very beneficial for your movement.
That was the last hard Assassin's Creed, if I'm going to say anything. That was hard to dodge. They made it quite easy in 3 to dodge bullets. But like for whatever reason, the combat was slower in Unity. You had to be more meticulous and methodical about it, but also dodging or trying to time it right to grab somebody as a human shield to have them get shot instead of you. That got me killed a lot. Was the guys who shot at you. That was tough.
You had to be on your game, and also Unity, I would say, was the last cinematic, stylized type of Assassin's Creed.
I love Unity,
where all the moves, this from the sword fighting to the parkour to the cinematics, everything was
beautiful.
A show. It was theatrical.
So good.
You watch Arno's moves in combat. I mean, they're fluid. They look like it makes it look like he's a fencer, which he was. He did study the art of fencing, but they made it look that way, which was nice.
I think it's because he was French.
And the stealth was so important. You had to be stealthy. You were rewarded. If you got caught, I mean, there was a chance you could die unless you were. The parry system was forgiving.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with that. But it, like you said, you could get shot or you could get ganged up on, and you can get hit while you're in the process of trying to strike someone else. I mean, the AI wasn't stupid, so. It was still a relatively easy game because there was no difficulty level.
Right.
And once you got the rhythm, it was like, okay, this isn't a problem. But they've never been that difficult. And since we're on the topic of Ubisoft primarily, GameSpot does a good job on YouTube to kind of like put in a timeline in their description of like what games are presented and when to go to that spot in the video. And I'm looking over the Ubisoft lineup again, and there's nothing like good here. The very first 20 minutes was Star Wars Outlaws, which again, visually impressive. I like it. I like the fact that it's open world and that you can go in outer space and have fights there. I think the seamlessness from going to planet to outer space is really cool.
Okay, just to caveat on that, it's not seamless, believe it or not. They made it look that way. Not. No.
So is there like a loading aspect?
That is the loading screen. So when you hit the atmosphere, that's when it starts loading. But it makes it look like it's seamless, which is pretty good.
So yeah, I was gonna say, like, if you could do like a Ratchet and Clank thing where you're going from warping from one world to another, and that's the loading part, it's still like built within the world, right?
Well, that's what Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order did with you're squeezing through a crack in the wall or something. That was the hidden loading screen.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant. And I'm not going to hold that against them. I think that's very clever. And as long as it's not overdrawn, like when you load in, for example, in Destiny 2, your ship's just kind of floating there, right? And you're just waiting, right? That's very obvious. But if you can make it like somehow still integrated into the world, I think that if you can do that, good job. And the fact that they have outer space combat was something I wasn't expecting that. I thought that was I was like, oh wow.
I don't think anybody was, to be honest. Yeah. We didn't expect them to actually go full bore. Oh yeah, you can have spaceship battles. It's like, whoa. Okay. Yeah, all right. I like this.
That was really cool. So I give them credit where credit's due. Do I really care about the character? No. Are they canon? I doubt it. Is it just another way to get a female lead in there? Maybe, because Star Wars is still a Disney-owned product.
Sadly,
look at Acolytes that's crashing and burning. It's getting so many bad
gay Star Wars. Woo!
it's so stupid. So like I think this is just their effort. Like Ubisoft and Disney are trying to put a strong female lead. I'm sorry, but Leia was a strong female lead.
Yes, she was.
And she wasn't, she wasn't even really a lead.
She was so hot,
kind of
though.
like she was just kind of like a side character that took the limelight because she was Luke's sister,
right?
And she fell in love with Han Solo, and yeah, that was her relevancy. But she kept both of them grounded, and she was like the mother figure to them both almost at times. That was she was such a compelling character. Everybody loved Leia. But when you force a character like Rey into the front and give that female character masculine qualities, that's not attractive.
No.
That's not what people want to see. If Rey was more feminine and she was more emotional rather than like trying to be this tank, like I remember watching the movies. Yeah. I just remember like she was standing and she was trying to present with broad shoulders and like really, I was like, you're a toothpick, girl.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to posture like men do when men try to broaden their shoulders, puff out their chest. Like that's a posturing thing for a very masculine figure. Women don't do that because they're not masculine in a lot of regards.
Yeah. Well, so, and let's be honest, Daisy Ridley, very beautiful woman. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
She's a very beautiful woman. They did not do her justice in those movies. Though I will say 7 was a good start. And then they changed directors and it fell off a cliff.
Yep. And then they castrated Luke Skywalker.
They
just did.
Yeah.
They just did. They completely did a disservice to the entire series, and they're doing this. And then I want to say Mandalorian was good, and and then there was drama around that, and then they have Acolytes coming out, and no one liked it because it's they're just doing a disservice. So I think to bring it back to the Ubisoft thing, Star Wars Outlaws, it looks good. I think having the female lead, it's fine, whatever. I hope they don't do the female lead dirty by trying, like you said, to make a female Han Solo. I think that'd be disingenuous and intellectually dishonest in a lot of ways to the lore of the Star Wars universe. But if they can create a compelling character with her own storyline and make her likable, I think it could do well, given that it looks like a fun game.
Right.
I mean, to some degree, it looks fun, but it's an Ubisoft title, so we can expect the Assassin's Creed effect,
Yeah. Well, and as far as I've heard, and people, you can correct me in the comments if you'd like, I think they said this was canon because it's between Empire Strikes Back and Jedi, I think.
Yeah, it's supposed to be between those.
So,
but they also say that the newest Star Wars trilogy with Rey was canon, and now they're trying to step. But now they're trying to step back. Take a step back on that, or at least that's what I heard.
I didn't hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of Star Wars YouTube channels, very diehard fans of the universe. I mean, they read the books and
Star Wars Theory.
Stuff. Yeah, him in particular, yeah. And they said that George Lucas, is looking to create an alternative to that trilogy.
Thank God.
Kind of make that an alternate universe or alternate galaxy kind of like timeline sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a poor way about going about it. But what else can you do? You can't erase it from people's memories now. It's now ingrained in us.
It's kind of difficult to say it's not canon when you have both Han Solo and Leia in the movies. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And people can say what they want about the original trilogy. Not the original trilogy, the second trilogy, but at least George kept it within the universe and kept the writing consistent. You know, they weren't great movies, episodes 1, 2, and 3, but people have a newfound respect because of the recent trilogy of 7, 8, and 9. They were like, wow, actually 1, 2, and 3 weren't terrible. They weren't. And I think most people actually enjoyed Attack of the Clones more than the first or third. I could be wrong about that. I know a lot of people love Phantom Menace, but Revenge of the Sith people seem to really like, even though it was a bit hammy. But
well, I think 1, 2, and 3 was great. I mean, we also have to remember George Lucas had 1 through 6 already written. The reason why he picked 4, 5, and 6 was because it was the cheapest to do,
right?
And that was within his budget.
Yeah,
and that's why he did those CGI enhancements, because that was the original vision.
I did not care for those. He should have just left them alone. It was fine the way it was. And now it's just like it's almost impossible to get the original trilogy in their standard form. I think you can find it, but you have to really look. And it's just like, my dude, the CG was unnecessary, especially at the canteen. Like the CG lips chick. Like, come on, dude. Let's not. All right. That's all we needed. That's fine. You should have left it at that. The green chick with the lips. What the hell was that? No.
Yeah, there were some issues with some of the CGI. Whoa. I think there were some good CGI elements, but yeah, there were some ones that were a bit cringe.
Like the bantha that the guys are trying to, control. That was fine. Yeah. It's like, it's a little extra element out where when they're traveling, but it's just like, my dude, no, it was fine. Yeah. Okay. We love the trilogy, the original trilogy, the way it was, because you did what you could and you did some phenomenal shit. And now I'm just like, I'm back on Star Trek, dude. I love the original show. I don't know. I thought I was going to be too campy for me. That campiness is awesome. I don't know what the hell it is, but I fucking love that show. And I just got the original, actually 10 movies. I got the original 6 with Shatner, and then there was the 4. It's all in one box set. So it's 10 movies from the motion picture all the way through whatever the last Next Generation movie was. So there was 4 movies based in the Next Generation universe, and then the first original 6 that we grew up with. So and it was $15.
Those will always be classics.
$15 for all that. DVDs,
what a deal.
But still, yeah, dude, I was like, oh yeah. Anyway, getting sidetracked.
Yeah.
Technically, we haven't even started the podcast, but I'll try and cut it somewhere here. So, yeah, I mean, Ubisoft, it's hard. It's hard to hate. It's hard to hate them completely, because I still play The Division. I still play X Defiant, Ghost Recon, fucking, the Star Wars game looks good. Assassin's Creed is just, I'm done. I think I can't, I could never bring myself to buy this. And I am done buying Ubisoft games. I'm done buying them because it's garbage. $70. No, thank you. And secondly, half the time it's shit material. And eventually it'll just be free on PlayStation Plus anyway. So, just like Far Cry 6 was.
It's tough to hate them because they have created such bangers. I mean, I'm looking at, like, they were the developers of Rayman.
Yeah, that's a big one.
They have Trackmania, Watch Dogs, which was really big.
I love the first Watch Dogs.
Yeah, people had issues with it at one point, but it was because of their cinematic trailer not being the true representation.
Right.
But, is what it is. But they also had the Tom Clancy games, Assassin's Creed series, the Far Cry series, Prince of Persia, For Honor, which is still a massive
which
deal.
I was surprised about. I think they showed that off at the conference.
They did. Yep.
Just like, what?
And then they also have Anno, which I'm not a really big fan of, but like that seems to be an extremely popular game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just found out that Anno 1800 actually exists on console, and it was free on PlayStation Plus. I'm like, I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, there it is, and I didn't realize it was on PlayStation. I didn't know they brought that to console. And when they announced the new one coming to console, I'm like, wait a second, when did that shit start? And then I saw Anno 1800 was on PS5. I'm like, oh my God. And so I grabbed it. I've got a whole bunch of the Anno games on PC. I haven't played any of them, but like what I see of it, I really like. It's like it's a 4X game, but like combat, or at least going to war with somebody is not important. Like, you don't have to. Whereas in like something like Civilization, you don't have to do it in there either, but it's usually beneficial to be militaristic. I don't know. I love those games. And I mean, those are time sinks. So it's just like I have to pick the right moment when I really want to put some time into those things.
Yeah. And they've had some shortcomings. Obviously, the big, disastrous, unnecessary production of Skull and Bones. That was a major letdown, as everyone could expect. But they did also, just a couple other bangers that they had. Immortals Phoenix Rising, that was really well received.
But never got a sequel.
Avatar is actually a beautiful game. I have it. I bought it so I can play co-op with my friend Steve. And it's a really good game. It's hard to navigate because, goddamn, you know, when you don't have any civilization within a universe, it's really hard to navigate the jungle, dude. Like,
well, apparently they have a full like immersion mode in that too that you can turn on. Yes, and it turns everything off, which is nuts.
Hard. It's hard, dude. And then they also had The Crew, which there's big controversy over that. But if we ignore that for the moment, The Crew was a massive success for them as well. So, like you said,
I honestly didn't think it was. I didn't know that it actually was that popular, because Crew 1 definitely fell by the wayside, and then they brought out Crew 2, and then it just kind of like stabilized. And I don't know if Motorfest is doing well, but it seems to be. I really wanted to play Motorfest, but I'm like, I don't want to spend the money.
But like you said, you know, just to your point, it's really hard to dislike Ubisoft because of what they've done. I mean, they've entirely created,
it's hard to dislike them entirely. You can still fucking hate them, but it's hard to go away from their games because, damn it, do they hit sometimes? Like that new Prince of Persia game.
Yeah, Prince of Persia, Lost Crown, Mask of Darkness.
Unbelievable. And
then they also have the Rogue of Prince of Persia, which I believe wasn't that as like a 2D side scroll or 2.5D side scroll or something like that.
Yeah, and they made him look gay. Like I know it's an art style, but he's purple and his hair looks a little bit You know, I mean, it doesn't look like the Prince of Persia.
I mean, it's kind of like the Assassin's Creed Chronicles, right? They're trying something different. It might do well, might not do well.
It's fine. I'm not going to base the game on the way he looks. You know, I mean, yeah, he's purple. I think that's just the color palette that they went with. It's like, oh, this guy's, Middle Eastern or Indian, but, you know, we want to do a stylized version, so we'll make him purple just so that people know he's not white. And it's just, I don't know. But it does look, it's Prince of Persia. I mean, it looks like the original Prince of Persia, but just
and speaking of original Prince of Persia, they also teased the Prince of Persia Sands of Time
again,
which is well, I mean, there was big controversy over it before, right?
Yeah, they showed the cinematic of what they were working on, and people hated it. They were like, this doesn't look like 5 years of work. What the fuck is going on? And so they pulled back and they were like, well, actually, it's not going to be ready until like 2026. So, you know,
which is probably the smartest move they could have done. Let's just hope it doesn't turn into a Skull and Bones 10-year development
I was just going to say.
Which I'm going to say here is like the fact that there's a season 2 is really sad. The fact that anyone's playing this piece of garbage. I dare not pick it up as much as I like the idea. They completely destroy. You can't be a pirate. There's no pirating about this. It's literally a ship fighting simulator.
Survival.
What survival aspect? You go up to a coast and you press a button
and it knocks down trees.
You hear chopping of wood. Who the fuck is doing that? The mast?
Your ship grows an arm and just goes.
Did you put swords on the mast and just knock it back and forth?
Stupid.
Like, what are you? Dude, it's the stupidest thing. The fact that anyone paid any kind of money for this is ridiculous. And the fact that Ubisoft called it a quadruple A title, they've lost their mind.
They are getting their asses reamed for that one. I think, who was it recently that said our game is now a sextuple A game? Somebody said that on Twitter, and they were just it was actually a pretty a company that has a decent game. I just can't remember who it was, but I mean, people, listen, if you want to play Skull and Bones, play AC4. I don't know what to tell you. Assassin's Creed 4 is Skull and Bones,
which is also getting a remaster.
I'm like, why though? Why?
So I think because of its popularity.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they fucked up with Skull and Bones.
I mean, I don't know the reason for them doing it all outside the fact that it's a super popular game. Everybody's still waiting for the remaster of AC1.
Me too.
Which I believe is in the works.
That'd be a remake though, right? Not a remaster.
That one will be a remake because they want to apply some of the new mechanics. So like the freedom of movement, it's not so tanky anymore.
Right.
It's a little bit more RPG. Like I think they hit something really sweet with Mirage where it's a bit RPG, but still a bit classic action RPG. You know what I'm saying? Like, action adventure,
right?
Which is what the original series was developed off of. I think it had a nice blend. And if they're going to be doing the remakes of AC4 and AC1, I think they'll hit a sweet spot if they go with the Mirage style. Personally, I think they need wall ejections, though. Like, here's a funny thing, and I don't know if you know this about Mirage, but when Mirage was released, shortly thereafter, they said, yeah, the parkour is still kind of there, but, it's not nearly as good. And so modders made wall ejections far better. And you know what happened? Ubisoft learned their lesson and took what that mod did, and either paid the mod or took the same system and implemented it. So now it's free for everybody to use.
What a surprise!
Which is incredible. But it's just to me, it sounds like why am I blanking on their name? Skyrim,
Bethesda.
Bethesda. It sounds like a Bethesda move, right? Like, here's some mods for a game. Those are perfect. Let's implement them.
Yeah.
Right? But you know what? It's the first time I think Ubisoft has ever really done that, and I applaud them for doing that because wall ejections and stuff like that is important.
But I'll tell you what, it wouldn't be the first time they stole something. That's for sure.
Facts. So there's a lot of Prince of Persia in the Ubisoft Forward event. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, Mask of Demons. Then you have the Rogue Prince of Persia, New Prince of Persia: Sands of Time teaser. In addition to that, there's a DLC to Avatar, which I still haven't beaten Avatar, even though it's like a 60-hour game, but it's, kudos to them. I think the Avatar game is great. So awesome. They also showed Rocksmith Plus, which I think is I wouldn't say a widely popular game, but it's very innovative. I thought Rocksmith was very innovative.
I think it's a good way to get more than Guitar Hero, to get people interested in actually playing the guitar. And I certainly wouldn't mind getting it myself, just because I could play guitar, but just not like that. So, that could probably help me a lot.
They also showed off the Crew Motorfest Chase Squad, and I think there's still some bitterness around this title, but the Crew is going to forever be like a fan favorite. Anno 117 Pax Romana, I think that's an expansion to the Anno title, or is that a whole new one? That's a whole new game. Yeah. Yep. But that wasn't really even a trailer. That was kind of like a monologue. Right. Yeah. With a lot of just imagery, but not actual games. So, but the two big things that came out of this, I think, and this is excluding Star Wars, because I mean, Star Wars is what it is. But it's not a true like IP for Ubisoft. In terms of Ubisoft IPs, I think the two biggest titles here, in my opinion, were Assassin's Creed Shadows and X-Defiant Season 1. So like X-Defiant is blowing up. A lot of people are calling it the COD killer, but that'll never happen. I
hate that.
Yeah, but it is a good alternative. It's a really good multiplayer FPS. In fact, you kind of got sucked into it as well a little bit.
Oh, I love it.
And Season 1 trailer was showcased, and it looks like a lot of the skins and stuff are really cool. I don't play the game myself, but I watch a lot of people play it. I've watched Shroud, Jack Braggs. I watched Tim play it, and a couple other people. I've watched you play it. So I enjoy watching it, though I'll never play it. But I like to see that it's finding success, because we do, I think, in the gaming universe, we need to have variety, and Call of Duty cannot be it, and Battlefield cannot be it. There needs to be a little bit more. Right. And I think what Ubisoft is doing with X-Defiant, which is kind of pulling all their universes together, is innovative. It's novel, and it actually creates this sense of like uniqueness for each squad. Where like if you take I don't know, it's kind of like any other title where you kind of artificially create these groups that really don't have any kind of meaning. Well, in X-Defiant, like you have the people from Watch Dogs, you have the people from Splinter Cell, you have the people from like these different IPs of theirs, and now they're just infused with their special abilities into this game. And I think that's a really cool thing. You haven't really seen that anywhere else.
Well, the beauty of XDefiant is it is purely on that fact, is that Ubisoft has so many different properties. It's written itself. They didn't have to be Call of Duty and come up with their own operators with their own names and their own backgrounds. They already have all of that. They just needed to figure out how to make it into a shooter. And as someone who's already put in, I want to say at least 40 hours or something like that, it's a fantastic job. I mean, it helps to actually have one of the biggest ex devs on Call of Duty doing it. Like, it's Mark Rubin. The guy was during, I believe he was back during the original Modern Warfare franchise. So like, this guy knows what the fuck he's doing, and he's doing everything right. And he's answering people on Twitter. He's talking to the community. He's actually implementing feedback. They're doing things right with XDefiant. I am so sick. And I was going to make an XDefiant video. I kind of just scrapped that idea because I'm like, I'd have to play every single faction. And I've got so many other things going on right now. I just don't care. But I'll say it right here. Stop saying every fucking game is a COD killer. Call of Duty cannot be killed by anything but Call of Duty. And they're doing it. They're doing it now. I mean, Black Ops 6 looks good. I know that's holy shit. Adam said Call of Duty looks good. It does. It does, because what did they do? They focused on campaign. They didn't focus on the multiplayer as much. They said, here's the campaign. Here's what you're going to be experiencing in the campaign. Here are the characters in the campaign. It was all about the story, because Call of Duty, guess what? It used to have a story. And people don't really remember Call of Duty 1, 2, and 3 that much. I do, because I played the shit out of them. But they weren't great stories until 4. 4 really set the bar for Call of Duty to have a good story. And it hasn't been good for a very long time. I don't care who you are. 2019 was phenomenally done. And then they just shit the bed with Modern Warfare 2, and Modern Warfare 3 doesn't exist. I don't know. It's not a game. It's a DLC that people paid $70 fucking for. And
I remember that. I was like,
so
who would pay money for this?
That makes It's a 3-hour-long campaign. Are you kidding me right now?
That's a joke, dude. That's not even a DLC, dude. That's literally not a DLC. That's like,
not close enough.
We forgot to add this part.
Yeah, no, and that's why Black Ops 6 is looking so good, because everything they showed was campaign related, and it looked like there was a lot to it. And then once they got to the multiplayer, the new movement system is so cool looking. I think, and I'm starting to believe
it's done by Sledgehammer, isn't it?
No, Treyarch. And that's Black Ops is Treyarch.
Is it Treyarch?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Black Ops has always been Treyarch. And I'm starting to believe everybody when they say, like my coworker Evan, he says Treyarch Call of Duties are the only ones that I care to touch. And I'm like, you know what? I don't blame you, because they're the only ones actually doing anything decent with the franchise. I mean, granted, Black Ops 3 story was stupid, and Black Ops 4 didn't have one. I didn't particularly care for Cold War. I thought it was garbage, but everybody praises that campaign for being amazing. I was bored. But
I wasn't entirely wrong. Sledgehammer Games is working on it.
Okay, well,
alongside Treyarch.
They're probably doing helping with multiplayer or zombies or something like that.
The only reason why I remember that is because people like Tim were mentioning how Sledgehammer Games has always had like really good movement in their games. I mean, I'm not a big Call of Duty fan. I don't really. I watched the CDL for a while until that whole thing with Nick and happened, and then I stopped watching it. But I trust people who have played them since the beginning, and when they say that there's a particular developer like Sledgehammer or Treyarch, and they're like, yeah, these guys know how to make a game, I kind of trust their opinion, especially when they're hypercritical of some of the other things. And on the topic of Call of Duty and their single player experience, imagine if they had a what's the word that I was thinking of in my head? Imagine if they had a culmination, like a composition, a full composition of the entire story. Like you take the story from the very first and you move it, because you have characters that are persistent throughout the story, right?
Yeah. So I mean, for the most part.
I mean, imagine having a compilation of all those wrapped up into one game. Like, you could resell that.
And it wouldn't be beneath Activision to do that for sure. Well, and that's what I was trying to figure out with I don't know how we got onto Black Ops 6, but I was trying to figure out
XDefiant.
Oh yeah, we were. Sorry, XDefiant. But I was trying to figure out the timeline in which to play the Black Ops games to kind of, bring the story around, to kind of go in sequence. And I think it's basically you play Black Ops 1, Black Ops Cold War, then 6, then 2, because 2 goes into the future and Woods is an old man, but he's in a wheelchair. Whereas in 6, he's in a wheelchair, but he's still young because he got his kneecaps blown out. That's in the story. And Black Ops 3 and 4, 3 didn't pertain to the story at all, and 4 didn't have a campaign, so you knock those 2 out. So I think that's the order in which you should play them if you want chronological story. You go 1, Cold War, 6, 2. But yeah, like I was trying to figure that out because I'm like, I wouldn't mind playing through that. But again, I'm not paying $70 for Call of Duty. I'm not paying for Call of Duty anymore. I am so disappointed that, I mean, I forgot how fun Call of Duty was until I played XDefiant. I'm like, man, Call of Duty used to be this fun. And we know why, because Mark Rubin is on it. Like, the guy knows what he's doing with a shooter. It feels really good.
Besides, Call of Duty is going to be the only game on your system with over 150 gigabytes worth
Yeah. It's a good thing I got a couple terabytes.
I know.
But anyway, so back to XDefiant. It's phenomenal. I think you should play it. Not you, but like whoever's listening. If you're a shooter fan, if you want classic Call of Duty feel, XDefiant's your game.